Thor: The Dark World. Not a huge fan of the first Thor movie. I think that The Dark World is a better movie, in my opinion, than the first one. However, it's still lower tier Marvel movies. In this one, Thor is a more weathered character. He's a lot more charismatic. He's more likable than he was in the first movie. Tom Hiddleston is great as always. Natalie Portman is fine, but there's still not much for her character. Even though her character is much more involved in the plot of this movie, she's kind of just there, though. Like, she doesn't really carry any kind of real emotional weight or need to be there. The useless comic relief character of Kat Dennings from the first movie now has an even more useless intern when she's an intern herself. It's just, why? Why? Why do we even pretend like we care about the human characters in these movies? Thor's warrior friends are given more personality. They recast one of the guys with Zachary Levi, who's kind of fun, I guess. You still don't get much from them, but they at least have like personalities that kind of shine through. The villain in this movie is probably the weakest villain in any of the Marvel movies, though. It's just a dude who doesn't even speak English. He's just like speaking his own language, which, I mean, it's fine if you can make him menacing and everything, and he's somewhat menacing, I guess. You don't know really what he wants to do. He just kind of wants to take over things and destroy the world. It's just generic. The movie is very pretty, though. The director of photography did a really good job. The effects are way better than the first movie. It holds up better. It's an enjoyable movie to watch, for sure. It's eye candy, the movie. Everything in Asgard is beautiful. The stuff on Earth, it's shot well. It's just very dark and bleak all the time. Just the lighting that they used, I guess it works as a stark contrast between the beautiful, bright, and vibrant colors of Asgard to the dark, desolate planet that they go visit, to the dark Earth. However, this movie wisely takes place a lot more in Asgard. There's not too much Earth in the movie except for the very beginning and then the finale, and then little snippets of the human characters doing things, saving Stellan Skarsgård from jail, and it's just stuff that we don't really care about. If they just left that all out of the movie, I would be fine with it. But we get to look at Thor's home. It still never really paints a clear picture of just what life is there. You get a little bit more fleshed out, though, which it's an interesting place, and I like that it's set there more, but you still don't get too much of what life is like on Asgard. The set there very much reminds me of like a mesh of like a Game of Thrones castle and the Jedi Temple from the prequels. In fact, a lot of the imagery in this movie is very similar to me of the Phantom Menace, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I think the Phantom Menace had some good designs in it, you know, for set designs and whatnot, even though it was all terribly animated in that movie. It's all green screen or whatever. This movie doesn't do that. I mean, I can't tell. It's not like the last movie where I could just see, oh, there's the green screen. But the effects work in this movie, and I think that imagery from the Phantom Menace is actually kind of cool to see in a different context. They kind of use the same color palette and everything, and even there's a ship chase towards the middle of the movie that very much seems like Star Wars to me, but it's something I actually kind of enjoyed about the movie. This movie better shows some of the space technology and how much more advanced they are than Earth in a lot of ways. However, you don't get too much of that. A lot of that stuff is better fleshed out in Guardians of the Galaxy or something, where they have a lot more technology in use. But here in this movie, they have a battle scene towards the beginning where they're all using swords, hammers, and axes, but then there's people with giant laser bazookas shooting at them. And it's just kind of a cool mesh of different space cultures. As for the stuff on Earth, the science, the portals, and gravitational things is actually kind of interesting. I liked that aspect of the movie. It was visually kind of cool. It's kind of a cool idea, which I'm sure is in a bunch of other sci-fi stuff that it's redundant or whatever, because it doesn't seem like a very original idea, but at the same time, I don't really recognize that from much else, and it was kind of fun to watch. Plays in at the end of the movie where they have this big battle sequence, but they keep going in between like different worlds, from Earth to like a different planet to another place on Earth. They just keep teleporting around, and it makes for a fun final battle. Even though there's not much emotional weight with the villain or even the hero, honestly, it's a fun action scene that's well constructed. I guess it's something that's kind of similar to Doctor Strange in a way, where they kind of bend the laws of physics and stuff in a way that you haven't really seen up until that point. Again, there's a lot of story problems in this movie, just like the first. I think this one maintains a more consistent tone throughout, though, so it's not as apparent. It doesn't just keep changing its mind every 5 minutes of what the movie's about. I think this movie's a lot better directed than the first one, and it's a shame to say that, considering this movie was directed by the guy who directed Terminator Genesis, and the first movie was directed by great actor and director Kenneth Branagh. But to be fair, this director also has directed a bunch of episodes of Game of Thrones, so he kind of evens himself out. However, this movie has a lot of those convenient aspects that just only service the plot, and it just doesn't really make much sense. Jane finds all these kids that are playing around with anti-gravity and these portals in London, and of course none of the kids ever get teleported to go to the Aether, but only whenever Jane shows up, then all of a sudden the only person on Earth who has a relationship with an Asgardian gets sent to a planet infected by an Aether that only Asgardians can stop. It's just so convenient, and I wish they just left Earth behind in this movie. This movie also kind of starts the Infinity Stone MacGuffin that we've seen in other Marvel movies since then. However, in this movie they kind of make Natalie Portman's character the MacGuffin, where she gets infected by the Aether, and so they have to work to protect her. People are trying to capture her, and it's just a thing that they want, and it's never really too well established what it is, except for this narration scene at the beginning where it's an unstoppable force that can kill people, and at the end it's an unstoppable force that can kill people. That's not every single Infinity Stone in every Marvel movie since then. Overall, though, this movie's not awful. I think it is better than the first movie. It's more consistent tone. It's better directed. It's visually appealing. It's a fun popcorn movie, you know? Not every superhero movie has to be The Dark Knight. Not every movie has to have a dark, depressing story like Logan, or over-the-top, goofy characters like Deadpool and turn itself into a comedy. I mean, it's just a fun action movie, and in a way, it's kind of the Transformers of the Marvel movies, where it's fun to look at and not much else. And that's okay. It's not as bad as the Transformer movies, in my opinion. I think it's a fun movie that you can just turn your brain off and watch, and that's not a terrible thing. I'd give this movie a 7 out of 10. So make sure to hit subscribe, look for a review for Thor Ragnarok as soon as that comes out, if not earlier, and leave a like down below. It makes me happy. I cry a lot less at night. I'm still going to cry every night, just a little bit less. Okay, I'm going to cry even more probably. Yeah, there's no holding back any tears. There's no getting around that. There's no stopping the seeping depression of my life.
I gave you my word. I would return for you. You face an enemy, known only to a few.